Many call it the greatest game in baseball history. The date is October 13th, 1960. The place is Forbes Field in Pittsburgh. Game 7 of the World Series, bottom of the ninth, and defensive whiz Bill Mazeroski steps to the plate. The preceding 8.5 innings have been filled with twists and turns, resulting in a 9-9 tie between the super team Yankees and underdog Pirates. You probably know what happens next. The only Game 7 walk-off home run in World Series history. Mazeroski is hailed as a hero. He had a good career, but this one swing was enough to catapult him into the Hall of Fame. But this video is not about Bill Mazeroski. This video is about this guy. His name is Ralph Terry, and he just gave up the most famous hit in World Series history. Baseball is filled with immortalized hits, but you don't get to hear about the other side too often. For every hero, there's a GOAT. Today, GOAT is an acronym for greatest of all time, but not too long ago, being a GOAT meant you fucking sucked. And in the eyes of the New York media in 1960, Ralph Terry fucking sucked. It didn't matter that he was a rising star with a stellar 3.4 ERA, or that he pitched a valiant 6 innings in Game 4 of the series, or that 3 other Yankee pitchers had blown a lead in Game 7. Terry gave up the winning home run. He was a GOAT. After the game, a dejected Terry famously remarked, "I don't know what the pitch was. All I know is it was the wrong one." Terry knew that if he didn't have a great career, that one wrong pitch would be the only thing he'd ever be remembered for. Ralph Terry did not want his legacy to be losing the greatest game ever played, so he did something about it. In 1961, Terry had the best season of his career, with a 3.15 ERA and a 16-3 record. His 1.18 ERA plus was second best on a Yankees team that won 109 games en route to a 4-1 win over Frank Robinson's Reds in the World Series. But in that World Series, Terry was mediocre in his Game 2 and Game 5 starts, with a 4.8 ERA and the lowest championship win percentage added of any Yankees pitcher. While Terry was now a World Series champion, he still hadn't shaken the memory of Mazeroski's home run. All that would change in 1962, where Terry was elected to the All-Star game for the first and only year of his career. Manager Ralph Houck employed an unconventional pitching rotation, with only 3 full-time starters and several other guys splitting their time between starting and relieving. Terry was one of these full-time starters, and it resulted in replicating his stellar 1961 numbers, but in 100 more innings pitched, leading the American League with 23 wins and 39 starts. His 4 WAR made him the second-best pitcher on the pennant-winning squad, right behind Hall of Famer Whitey Ford. Terry went into the World Series in the best form of his career, eager to prove he was more than a historical footnote. He was scheduled to take the ball in Game 2 at Candlestick Park in San Francisco against the upstart Giants, led by Willie Mays, Orlando Cepeda, Willie Mccovey, and the Alou brothers on offense, and Cy Young contenders Jack Sanford, Billy Pierce, and Juan Marichal on the mound. They came back in the 9th inning against the Dodgers to win a Game 163 tiebreaker and the NL pennant just one day before the start of the World Series. The 1962 Yankees, on the other hand, were a solid team, but didn't quite reach the heights they had in the previous 2 years. While Mickey Mantle was Mickey Mantle, fellow All-Stars Elston Howard, Moose Skowron, and Roger Maris had relative down years, and Yogi Berra was injured for most of the season. They had 96 wins, but compared to the 103-win Giants, the Yankees were in the rare position of being underdogs, so there'd be a completely different feeling surrounding this series. In Game 1, Whitey Ford pitched a complete game, allowing just 2 runs, and a Roger Maris 2 RBI double gave the Yankees a lead that they never let go of. With the chance to take a commanding 2-0 series lead heading back to New York, Ralph Terry was entrusted with the start. He was good, giving up just 2 runs through 7 innings on a homer by Willie Mccovey, but the Yankees' offense was shut down by a complete game shutout from Jack Sanford. While Terry gave up just 6 base runners, it wasn't enough to take the win, and he would need another chance to redeem himself. In New York, the Giants and Yankees each took a game before a 1-day rain delay gave Terry the chance to start Game 5 on full rest. Although it wasn't pretty, giving up 8 hits and 3 runs, Terry threw a complete game to outduel Jack Sanford and give the Yankees a 3-2 lead. The series was scheduled to go back to San Francisco, but more rain was in the forecast. There were 5 days between Games 5 and 6, which gave New York the luxury to start its 2 aces, Whitey Ford and Terry, in the final 2 games of the season. After Ford failed to close out the series in Game 6, it was Ralph Terry's turn to take the mound. While he had been good so far in the 62 series, he wasn't great. He wasn't great enough to transcend his past failure, but he had the rare opportunity to rewrite history. The night before the big game, Terry played poker with Yogi Berra, Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, Moose Skowron, and Clete Boyer. Terry stank at poker, and Yogi Berra was a notorious card shark, but that night Ralph Terry wiped the floor with his all-star teammates. Everybody considered it a good omen for the biggest game of the year. In a pregame interview, Terry said that letting him pitch Game 7 after the Mazeroski homer was like a tonic to him. The stage was set. Ralph Terry, World Series GOAT, had a chance at redemption that almost no one else would ever get. Before getting into Game 7, I want to talk about stats a little bit. Specifically WPA, or win percentage added, which is a cumulative, context-based stat that measures how much a player's actions influence the outcome of a single game. It uses 100 plus years of games to measure how often teams win in every possible score differential and out and base runner situation. For example, at the start of the game, each team has a 50% chance to win. If Team A hits a leadoff home run in the top of the first, their chance to win goes up to 60%. The player who hit that home run would get 10% WPA, while the pitcher would get negative 10%. But if that same player hit a home run in a tie game in the 9th inning, they would go from 50% chance to win to 83%, giving them a 33% WPA. This stat has been translated to CWPA, which is championship win percentage added, which combines the WPA of a single game with the importance of that game in a team's chance to win a World Series. On opening day, or if your team is already eliminated from the playoffs, even if you hit a walk-off home run, your team will have basically zero CWPA. But Bill Mazeroski's 1960 home run took the Pirates from a 63% chance to win the World Series to a 100% chance, giving Mazeroski a 37% CWPA and Ralph Terry negative 37%. These are the two metrics that we'll be looking at for the rest of the video, but just keep in mind that in Game 7 of the World Series, WPA is essentially equal to CWPA. Before Game 7, Terry had a 14.1% CWPA, which is a well above average performance, but nothing special. As the game progresses, I'll show each team's win percentage and Terry's cumulative WPA. He would face San Francisco's fearsome lineup in Game 7, one that led the NL in runs and had 3 Hall of Famers in Mays, Mccovey, and Cepeda. He sat down the side in the first, inducing a pop-up to left from Willie Mays. In the second, Mccovey, Cepeda, and Tom Haller were sat down in order. Then he did it again in the third, and then in the fourth. Up until this point, San Francisco's Jack Sanford had matched Terry's performance, but in the top of the fifth, Moose Skowron and Clete Boyer hit 2 singles to start the inning. Ralph Terry stepped to the plate with everyone on the planet expecting an easy out. Instead, Terry drew a 4-pitch walk loading the bases with no outs. Tony Kubek, the Yankees' leadoff hitter, grounded a ball to short. It was a tailor-made double play, but nonetheless it gave the Yankees a 1-0 lead. Bobby Richardson then popped out to end the 5th inning for the Yankees. Ralph Terry pitched a 1-2-3 fifth, and he quietly had a perfect game going. After retiring the first 2 hitters in the 6th, of all people it was opposing pitcher Jack Sanford who broke up the perfect game with a soft liner to right center. But Terry remained unfazed. He induced a soft bouncer to third to end the inning. In the 7th, Terry faced Willie Mays with 1 out. Mays was having an extremely quiet series with just 1 RBI, and he was looking to give the Giants a spark in the form of a second base runner. He turned on a fastball and laced a liner down the left field line. Rookie of the Year winner Tom Tresh chased after it, seemingly in vain. Tresh was a natural shortstop who was moved to left to make room for Tony Kubek, so he was a great athlete. He stretched out and made a snow cone catch 10 feet from the foul line. 2 down and Willie Mccovey stepped in. Mccovey's left-handed swing is the stuff of legend. Long and powerful but with lightning-quick hands. He barreled a pitch and shot a high fly ball to center. Mickey Mantle chased after it, but being on the wrong side of 30 with a reconstructed knee, he was hardly the picture of speed. The ball caromed off the wall awkwardly, and Mantle couldn't field it cleanly. Mccovey isn't fast in the classic sense, but once his long legs got churning, he could cover a lot of ground quickly. By the time Mantle recovered the ball, Mccovey was already taking a big turn around third. Mantle fired it in, and at seemingly the very last moment, Giants third base coach Whitey Lockman throws up the stop sign. Were it not for Tresh's heroic catch and Mantle's arm, it could very well be a 2-1 ballgame, but Terry and the Yankees cling to a 1-run lead with 2 outs. The threat wasn't over, though. The big bat of Orlando Cepeda loomed, and San Francisco had a runner in scoring position for the first time all game. Manager Ralph Houck started up the pen. Terry had put in a good effort, but was probably done if he couldn't get out of this jam. Terry got ahead of Cepeda, working it to a 1-2 count, and catcher Elston Howard walked out to the mound to give the relievers more time to warm up just in case things went wrong. He was able to get Cepeda to whiff on a sweeping curve, and Terry was through 7 innings with just 2 base runners allowed. In the top of the 8th, the Yankees loaded the bases with no outs, but after a force at home and a double play, came away with nothing to show for it. The score was still 1-0. Although Whitey Ford had pitched 5 innings less than 24 hours earlier, he began to warm up in the bullpen. Terry went out for the bottom of the 8th and promptly retired the side in order. With the Yankees failing to score in the top of the 9th, Ralph Terry had a chance to do something nobody had ever done: get the win in a 1-0 World Series Game 7. But the specter of Bill Mazeroski still loomed. Terry knew as well as anyone that if he blew this lead, the previous 8 innings would not matter. He'd go right back to being a GOAT. Even though Whitey Ford and 2 other relievers were ready to go, Houck wouldn't dream of pulling a pitcher that had only allowed 2 base runners through 8 innings. What would follow is, for my money, considering all the legends of the game involved and the off-the-charts tension, the best inning of baseball ever played. The speedy Matty Alou would pinch hit to lead off the 9th, and he laid down a perfect drag bunt. Terry was unable to make the play, and the leadoff man was aboard. Felipe Alou was up next, and Giants manager Alvin Dark gave the sign to sacrifice bunt his brother to second. On the first pitch, Alou dropped one down the first base line, but it barely rolled foul. On the second pitch, Dark gave Alou a hit and run sign, but Terry threw a high fastball that he had to foul off to stop his brother from getting thrown out at second. On the third pitch, Terry threw a fastball that Alou took a mighty swing at, and a mighty miss. Up next was second baseman Chuck Hiller, who once again tried and failed to move Matty Alou to second with a bunt. Hiller struck out on the next pitch, meaning Willie Mays was the last hope for the Giants. Mays knew the situation and how well Terry was pitching. He strode to the plate looking to do nothing but put the ball over the fence and end the series. Terry, on the other hand, knew Mays would be aggressive, looking to end the game and his series-long slump. He started the at-bat with 2 inside fastballs, but Mays showed his composure and took both. On the 2-0 pitch, Terry tried to sneak an outside fastball past him, but Mays pretty much just stuck his barrel out. The ball was lined over the head of the first baseman Skowron, headed for the corner, and Matty Alou was on his horse looking to tie the game. The crowd stood, expecting this hit to define the career of an all-time great. The Yankee bullpen had a front row seat to the play, and nervously looked on, expecting to be pressed into service in the next at-bat. But as the ball landed, be it backspin from the relatively weak hit, or the damp outfield from the week of rain, it kind of just died. Right fielder Roger Maris cut it off and unleashed a throw to the infield. For the second time that day, Giants third base coach Whitey Lockman holds the tying run at third. Could Alou have scored? It's impossible to say for sure, but Felipe Alou, looking on from the dugout, would later say his brother would have been hosed at the plate, and manager Alvin Dark felt the same way. Willie Mays said he would have ignored the stop sign and ran like a freight train into the catcher, but not everyone is Willie Mays. Especially with 2 Hall of Famers due up, it was probably wise to hold the runner. Sprinting to back up home on the play, Ralph Terry slipped in the dirt around home plate, and New York manager Ralph Houck walked out to the mound to give him a breather. Now with a World Series winning run on second, Houck faced a series of tough decisions. Was Ralph Terry done? He hadn't looked sharp this inning, and he had a Hall of Famer Whitey Ford, a lefty, ready to face the lefty Willie Mccovey. Maybe in today's game, maybe according to the analytics, Terry would have and should have been pulled. But no, Houck had faith in his guy. Faith that he could shake his demons. This was Ralph Terry's game and season to win or lose. With that out of the way, who would Terry pitch to? He had the platoon disadvantage against Mccovey, and a base open to intentionally walk him. But Orlando Cepeda on deck was hardly a pushover. Houck asked Terry himself, and Terry chose to pitch to Mccovey, not wanting to have to pitch to Cepeda with nowhere to put him and the tying run on third. The Giants dugout couldn't believe they were leaving Terry in and pitching to Mccovey. Houck wasn't much more confident in the decision, later saying if they lost he'd be crucified by the media and almost certainly fired. As was customary during mound visits, the Yankee infield converged to talk strategy and shoot the breeze. Shortstop Tony Kubek told second baseman Bobby Richardson, "I hope Mccovey doesn't hit it to you." When Richardson asked why, Kubek heckled, "'Cause you've already made a couple errors, and if you blow this one, we're in real trouble." Willie Mays, listening in, enjoyed a laugh amongst the stressful moment. But quietly, Kubek was grateful Mccovey was hitting. The notorious pull hitter would not hit a ball to short, and Kubek did not want that weight put on him. Tom Tresh, the natural shortstop in left field, will later say he was relieved to be out of the infield that day too. Terry would later admit he was having flashbacks to the 1960 series. He was masterful for 8 2/3, but it all came to a head here. He was nervous, but anyone on the planet would be too. Willie Mccovey, on the other hand, stepped into the box feeling good. He was seeing Terry well, was fresh off hitting a screaming triple, and had already homered off Terry earlier in the series. He knew it would only take a single to score the speedy Mays, so he wanted to catch a pitch earlier in the count and just put a good swing on it. Terry wanted to catch Mccovey off guard with a first pitch curve, but he hung it over the middle of the plate. Mccovey jumped on it, smashing a fly ball to right. Just for a moment, the crowd stood, thinking the game may be over, but Mccovey was just in front of it, hooking the ball foul. Bobby Richardson at second saw Mccovey was in front of it, so he took a couple steps back and towards first base. Terry looked at him perplexed. He would later say he thought Richardson was way out of position and started to move him back, but decided against it. Richardson had manned the keystone for the Yankees for 7 years after all. He knew what he was doing. Wanting to change speeds, Terry reached back and chucked an inside fastball as hard as he could, looking to jam Mccovey, but Willie expected it. He uncoiled his ferocious swing and screamed a liner to right. It was the hardest ball hit by anyone that day, and later Mccovey would say it was one of the hardest balls he ever hit in his 22-year career. Mickey Mantle in center would say he heard the crack of the bat and never even saw the ball. For a brief moment, everyone in the stadium turned to Roger Maris in right to see if he could cut down the winning run at the plate. But then something strange happened. Ralph Terry threw his cap in the air and began running towards Bobby Richardson. The second baseman nonchalantly jogged towards the mound and revealed the pearly white baseball to the world. The Yankees won the World Series. You see, Mccovey had destroyed the baseball, but gotten slightly on top of it, putting just enough topspin on the ball to guide it into Richardson's glove. Had Mccovey put the ball a little more in the air, or hit it 2 feet to the left or right, or Richardson hadn't made his slight shift the pitch before, the San Francisco Giants would be world champions. Game of inches indeed. Ralph Terry was vindicated, freed from the grip of his one missed pitch 2 years earlier. "That was the greatest game I've ever pitched in my life," he said. "I am a very lucky fellow, and I want to thank God for a second opportunity. You don't often get a second chance to prove yourself in baseball or in life." He had just pitched one of the greatest games in baseball history. In fact, I'll make the argument that it capped off the greatest World Series ever pitched by anybody. Here's a list of the 15 best World Series pitching performances by CWPA. Lots of iconic names in series, like Walter Johnson in 1924, Pete Alexander in 1926, and Sandy Koufax in 1965. But 3 stick out from the rest. The first is Madison Bumgarner, and I'll be honest, this video was originally about Madison Bumgarner, but after compiling this list and hearing Terry's story, I decided against it. The second is Jack Morris, who is the only other person on the planet to win a 1-0 World Series Game 7. And finally, at number 1, is our friend Ralph. In 3 games pitched, 25 innings, a 1.8 ERA, and 99.7% championship win percentage added. He was essentially worth an entire World Series win himself. While it is technically possible to have over 100 CWPA in a series, nobody has ever done it, and Terry's figure is the closest anyone's ever come. His Game 7 performance, with a final line of 4 hits allowed, 4 strikeouts, 0 walks, and 0 runs, was worth 85.6% CWPA, just edging out Jack Morris for the highest CWPA in a single game of all time. The name Ralph Terry was no longer a historical footnote, the answer to a trivia question. Ralph Terry was and always would be a hero. Terry was solid in 1963, but his career took a quick downturn after that. He was traded to Cleveland in 1965, then the Mets in 66, and was out of baseball a year later at age 31. He began working in the insurance industry to keep busy, but he was finally free to pursue what may have been his true passion, golf. Terry was excellent, qualifying for the PGA Tour and later the Senior Tour, ending up earning more than what he had from baseball. Funny how sometimes things work out. Willie Mccovey and Bobby Richardson, the 2 players intertwined on that fateful play, wouldn't meet again until 2007. At a gathering before a Giants-Yankees game, Willie walked over to Richardson and quipped, "I bet your hand is still hurting." Willie Mccovey passed away in 2018. Thanks for sticking around. This type of video takes a lot longer to make, but it's the direction I want to take more of my content for the foreseeable future. So if you enjoyed, the best thing you can do is share the video with someone you think might like it, and let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter, etc., etc. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.